There are two sides to every story. The National Broadcasting Company presents the vivid drama of life itself. Broadcasting's original program of mediation, the Court of Human Relations. And now the man who has familiarized millions of people with the idea of mediation, helped to make it a creative force in American life. A.L. Alexander.
Against the great canvas of impressive world happenings, it is quite natural to overlook the abstraction known as the human being. But I often wonder which is more important, really, the consideration of overwhelming issues that have confronted mankind since history has been recorded and are never truly solved, or the bringing of a little peace and happiness to a single human soul. And so in these times, when a special burden is placed on the basic human condition, we submit each day to our mediation panel an issue of real life arising from those strong forces that encompass us as human beings, the never-ending attempt to achieve some measure of security and happiness. Our mediators are three noted persons of skilled and self-reliant judgment: Miss Pearl Buck, Dr. Lloyd E. Foster, Dr. Robert J. McCracken. Now here is a challenge that should yield to the joint examination of an author, a sociologist, a clergyman. Now here is the complainant.
Mr. Alexander, members of the board, can any woman find any happiness with a man who is without any feeling of responsibility to her or their marriage? A man who is completely self-centered, who seeks out the exotic for its own sake. I came from a family that is very conventional, almost bound by the chains of convention, one might say. And I met my husband. I was very attracted to him because he was not bound by these chains of convention. He was free from the worries about the rules of life. I met him, I fell in love with him, and I married him.
And what has happened?
Well, as I said, I was attracted to him because he was not a conventional person. However, I didn't realize quite how this was going to affect me. He is often not at home for long periods of time, sometimes almost a week. He comes, he goes, he doesn't say where he's going or when he's going. He doesn't feel that, evidently, that it's important to tell me where he is. And when he does come home, he brings people I've never seen, never expected to see in my life, and I'm supposed to be friendly and nice and companionable to these people that I really prefer not to know.
Does he give you any notice as to when this is going to happen?
No, he just comes in, and sometimes at midnight with a couple of people in tow and says, "Here we are, be nice."
And does he consult with you as to when they should leave?
Oh, no.
Now, what about the financial aspects?
Well, I'm employed. I support both of us. He brings in occasional small amounts of money, and his contribution to the family exchequer is very little.
And what is the situation generally now?
Well, I find myself married to a man who evidently doesn't want to be married to me or anyone.
Well, would you say that you were technically married, that you get none of the usual benefits of marriage?
Yes, I would say that.
And what is the situation right now? Have you spoken to him about it?
I've spoken to him, he's spoken to me. We've gone over it time and time again, and all he says is, "Well, you knew what I was like when we were married."
Now, specifically, why have you come here?
Well, I thought perhaps, well, we are unable to talk to one another about this. I thought perhaps someone else, another point of view, could help us somehow to adjust our difficulties.
Would you say settle it one way or the other?
I would like it settled one way or another, yes.
You do love him?
Yes, I think I do. It's hard to say when you're as annoyed with a person as I've become, whether you you love them, but I love him.
But this has more or less reached the breaking point so far as a relationship of any kind is concerned, aside from the question of love.
Well, there really isn't any relationship.
Yes.
He says, just one of those things. He says he loves me, he says that we're married, and I say we're not.
Yes. Well, now, suppose we hear from the respondent husband.
Well, my wife knew exactly what I was like when she married me. I didn't try to pull the wool over her eyes. I told her exactly the kind of person I was. We spent some time together. She had time to get to know me, and I feel she must accept this.
Well, will you tell the members of this panel, what is your purpose in life? What are you doing?
Well, my purpose in life simply is to be a fine writer, if possible. And
what are you trying to do to be a fine writer?
Well, I'm trying to find out the nature of the human experience, and I'm trying to investigate that experience as thoroughly as I possibly can.
And in order to do that, do you want to be completely saturated with life? Is that the idea?
Well, in order to do that thoroughly, anyone has to be completely saturated with life. I mean, it's part of the obligation I have to work.
And you're sort of drinking up life, and then when you've done that to a great extent for a number of years, what do you want to do with it?
Well, it's not a question of drinking up life. It's a question of my being involved in life thoroughly up to as far as my complete capacity is concerned. And after I do that, after I have absorbed this, I plan to make use of it. I plan to put it in some practical form.
Well, now, will you give the world the fruit of your experience? Is that the idea? You must have some purpose. You're not just doing this for its own sake. Don't you want to write a book?
Yes, but it's not a question of fruit of my experience. It's a question of what I feel and what I sense and what I want to put across.
Well, you're not just going on feeling and sensing. What are you going to do with this after you absorb all this and live life?
Well, I said I would put it into some practical form. And a practical form is something like a play, a story.
Yes, well, that's what we were trying to get at. Now, we want to ask you these questions, and you understand that the spirit of this interrogation is not to embarrass you in any way, but merely to get at the core of the matter so the mediators can pass some kind of helpful judgment. Is it true that you remain away from home for sometimes, at least for days at a time?
Yes.
That you arrive at all hours of the night when, under more normal circumstances even, and that your wife has no idea of when you'll be home and when not?
To a certain degree, yes.
Well, you give her no notice. For example, you might go out of town someplace on a special expedition, and she has no knowledge of that, and you don't let her know. Isn't that right?
Yes, I may go out. It's not exactly an expedition.
Well, whatever it is, you go out, and she doesn't know where you are.
Yes.
Now, is it true that you come back frequently, or on occasion at least, with strange characters or personalities along the lines described by your wife?
Yes, I come back with people, and they may seem strange to others. They're not strange to me.
Well, suppose you tell us something about them.
Well, what do you want to know?
Well, you say they may seem strange to other people, but not strange to you. Give us an idea of what they're like. What kind of people?
Well, they're all kinds of people, from every strata of life, actually. They're people who I meet through various types of associations. The only difference between what I do and what other people do is that in my human associations with people, I extend this a little farther. I get to try to know them a little more fully, a little more deeply, so that I can find out what kind of people they really are. Now, I don't go seeking these people in a sense. That's a result of what happens.
Well, we'll go into that in a moment, but I was simply inquiring, do you go into a restaurant or into a bar?
Well, sometimes I go, for example, I might go downtown on the Lower East Side or someplace like that. I I wander kind of in a way. I don't decide where I'm going before I go. It's on an impulse, and when I get to that particular place, wherever it may be, I meet people. It may be in a bar on the Lower East Side, and I start to talk to these people.
Yes, and if you like them or you find something interesting about them, whether you like them or not, then in some instances you bring them home and extend hospitality to them so that you can explore the situation further. Is that right?
Well, I do bring them home, yes, so that I could learn more about what they are like. Yes.
Well, now, will you tell the members of this board whether or not you feel that this kind of operation is essential in order for you to be successful professionally as a writer?
Well, I think it's very essential for me because it's part of the nature of my existence, and
can you be an effective writer without doing that?
I'd be a less effective one. It's like a compulsion for me to go out and to absorb all nature, all kinds of people, so that I can utilize this in some form. I don't even know at this point how I will utilize it, actually.
But in the meantime, you have practically no income.
Yes, that's true.
The answer is that you have practically no income.
Yes.
And your wife should understand that on the basis of her understanding of your background when you met her.
Yes, she was perfectly aware. I realize that she's undergoing a tremendous strain. I realize she's making terrific sacrifices, and I have a great deal of compassion for that. But it's an impossibility for me to do anything else.
Why do you do it?
Because I have to do it.
You mean you couldn't live, you couldn't breathe, you couldn't sleep unless you did it?
It would be very difficult.
Now, so there won't be any misunderstanding, and this is a grave situation because it does involve your marriage and the happiness of a person other than yourself, and conceivably the happiness of other people. When you talk to a person, you don't interview them as if you were a reporter and find out when they were born and what location they came from and what their interests are in life. Is this a give and take kind of thing?
Yes. The people I meet, as I try to say in a way before, writing is the result of a long process of living, and it doesn't come about for me in an immediate situation. That is, what I mean by that is that immediate experiences, I don't seek experiences. I go out to meet people as we all do in life. I just take advantage of those experiences and I utilize them in the best way that I can.
No, but I mean, if you sit down at a table in a restaurant and a man is having a drink, you join him in a drink, and then you may spend 3 or 4 days with that man. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And you may argue with him, and you may laugh with him, and you may pray with him, and you may have some sort of close contact with him or members of his family, very intimate contact in some circumstances, in order that you may know who that man is, what makes him tick. Is that right?
Yes, that's true.
And this goes on every day, more or less.
Yes.
Well, now we turn to the complainant wife. Your husband gives us the impression that you knew all about this when you married him.
I knew, as I said, that he was not conventional. I knew that he would not be earning a living. This is not my problem. I don't mind going out to work so that we can both live. This is part of my sacrifice. I feel that he does have to write, and I can't expect him to live the ordinary life, but I do feel that there are certain emotional obligations that he has to me, that he could share with me some consideration of my emotional needs. I can't live alone all my life and be married to a man who comes and goes whenever he pleases, and who sits there and says, well, you knew what it was like, that's all. Granted that I may have intellectually been aware of what the problem might be, I had no conception of what it was going to do to me after 3 years of living with this way, of not knowing where my husband was, or even sometimes if I had a husband.
Yes, I think we understand. You knew about it, but you didn't know that it was going to have this kind of reaction, or it was going this far. Now, we addressed the respondent husband. Wouldn't it be possible for you to share some of this experience with your wife? We assume that in the beginning this was part of a courtship. It was very romantic to go to various parts of New York and discover new things. At least she was seeing some of these things, or most of them, for the first time. Wouldn't it be possible for her to share all of this experience with you?
It was possible in the beginning. She was very romantic about it, but I am not at all romantic about it.
Well, do you feel that she can't keep up with you? And this is a job that you have, and it requires concentrated effort on your part. Is that right?
Well, it means my doing things which are against her nature in a way, and I perfectly understand that. But she gets very bored with these things, and she doesn't find any interest in what I do. It becomes annoying to her.
It's not necessarily true. I don't get bored, but I have to get up every morning and go to work. How can I go for days with you wherever you want to go? I've got to go to bed at night.
Yes, but if I take you out anyway, you get very tired. You don't enjoy where I want to go.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, I get very tired, yes.
Well, that's true.
We address the wife. What has been the effect of this strain on you, not only of such contact as you've had with him when you've gone out on these explorations, but when you've not been with him and had to wait and wonder and worry and been denied his company? What has been the reaction on you?
I find that I get nervous headaches and nervous stomachs, and I'm much too young to be bothered with ulcers, but I'm getting them. And I think it's because of being alone so much and not knowing what's happening.
Well, now, in a moment, we're going to ask the mediators to give their reaction to this situation. I think the issue is joined here, but there's just one more question we'd like to ask. If you weren't here now, you'd probably be out on one of these, what did you call them? They're not expeditions?
No, they're not expeditions. I would just be out.
You'd be out. Now, if you were out, would you mind telling this board what you'd be doing? Specifically, in detail. Where would you go and what would you do?
Well, I sort of intimated what I might do. I might go down to a place, Lower East Side bar. I sit down and I talk to somebody.
Is that your favorite haunt, the Lower? Don't you go any other place?
No, I go other places. I go all over the city. One of the places I've been recently is down in the park in the village where they have folk dancing. And I don't care for folk dancing myself, but the people there seem to be thoroughly enjoying themselves. They're all wrapped up in this kind of thing, and it's a kind of a break away from the city. And here they can release themselves in a way in a kind of simple dance form. And I just listen and I watch and I see how these people get thoroughly involved with themselves and how they get thoroughly involved in the dance. And it's a way for them of getting away from the harshness in a way that the city produces. And for me, it's my way of finding out how they feel.
And just this question, do you love your wife?
Yes, very much.
Well, why do you need a wife?
Because I love her.
She can help you in lots of ways, and she does.
Oh, of course she can help me. I mean, she's been wonderful to me. I know that I have overextended my bounds in a way, but it's something that I can't help. She realized that before when she married me, and it's something I must go on, continue doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. McCracken?
Well, the complainant, to some extent, did walk into this situation with her eyes open, and she's bound now to feel that conventionality has a significance that at one time she didn't appreciate. In ordered life, there have to be standards, and the majority have to observe the standards. The respondent strikes me as being thoroughly irresponsible. In this search for experience, he forgets the obligations he has incurred, not after all only to his wife, but to society. And I think he's hoodwinking himself about writing, because some time already has passed, and I have heard nothing to indicate that you're published yet. And I would imagine that such experiences as you are sharing are going to become more and more remote. You can't indefinitely absorb if you're not producing. I think you've got to look realistically at this situation. Think less about yourself and more about the woman you have taken to be your wife. I think you're asking outrageous things of her, and it seems to me that she has presented a strong case.
Dr. McCracken, I wonder, before we go on, if we can't ask this question of this writer, husband, respondent. Dr. McCracken mentioned that as far as he knew, you are not as yet published. Is that true?
Yes.
You're not ready to be published, are you, from your point of view?
No. It took James Joyce 10 years to get Ulysses published.
By the way, who are your favorite authors? What is the literature you like best?
Well, James Joyce happens to be one, Faulkner is another, O'Neill is a third, Strindberg is a fourth. Those are a few.
And how many years would you say it will take before you've prepared, till the soil, so to speak, so that you'll be ready to be published?
That's impossible to say.
Well,
I would say maybe 10 years. It could be 10 years. It could be less.
But not much less. I mean, not this year or next year or the year
certainly not in the
following.
next 2 or 3, 4 years.
Ms. Bach?
Well, if I'm to speak practically and directly, I should say that this is a hopeless marriage unless this young woman finds in this man something which makes it worthwhile to continue like this. The marriage will never be satisfactory, I'm afraid, from your point of view. As a writer, I understand a good deal of what he is talking about, but writers write in many different ways. We see a writer like Marcel Proust, who practically never left his room, and yet wrote very deep and searching books. That's one method. He was a man of superb imagination, and we've perhaps this writer is trying to find out what he is. He still speaks of men whose lives and methods he may be imitating without knowing it. He has not yet found his real way to find material. We all find material out of the life we live, or may be compelled to live. There are writers like James Joyce, great writers, who go out and never have roots, and all the women that they marry, however many they may be, and they're usually many, are all unhappy. And it's the woman that has to decide whether that's worth living or not.
And is that the crux of this matter?
The crux of this marriage is that these two people are so totally different that unless the woman decides that the scraps of what she gets are better than the full happiness she might have with somebody else. And that's for her to decide, because this man will never give her happiness in the terms that she needs. And she has to decide whether what she can settle for what she can get. And perhaps he will never become a great writer, but he has to find out in his own way. And that's a large question for her to decide. But I think she has to decide on the basis of what she has now, because you will never get anything different. Even if he becomes a successful writer, you will still not get anything different.
Dr. Foster, do you agree with Ms. Buck and Dr.
I
McCracken?
agree. There is one phase of it that I would touch upon, namely the husband's contention that he must experience all the facets of life, I believe, may become, perhaps it has become now, a rationalization of his own undisciplined desires. And I believe that sensitive and imaginative writing flow out of achieving the positive qualities of life as well as seeing the negative and ugly side. And if he were more aware of his wife's needs and more devoted to her, perhaps in his companionship and in trustworthiness and in sharing, there would be a heightening of powers that will not come through his searching society and finding the sinister and dark aspects of it.
Well, I mean, you seem to indicate that I'm searching for the sinister and dark aspects when I mentioned a folk dance in Central Park, which is as simple and as beautiful as American can be in times like these. And it happens in a great metropolis, Central Park. It's not in the country, it's not in Kentucky, it's right here in New York City.
Well, granted that that is an inspiring thing, we'd like to direct this question to you. Are you prepared to give up at least some of the efforts that you've been making in the direction that you've talked about at great length in order to have a rather different kind of marriage? Is it possible for you to give a great deal of that up, considerable of it, in order to contribute a great deal more of your creative energy and your imagination and your devotion to a wife and a marriage?
It's only possible for me to be more aware of my wife's problem. It's not possible for me to give up.
Well, actually, there are two aspects to this case. One is related to the husband's rather extraordinary activity and his attempts to achieve as a writer, and the other to the marriage itself. Now, I think this board agrees that as far as the marriage is concerned, by most any definition, no marriage in the commonly accepted sense actually exists here. It is the view of the board that the motivation, apparently, that prompted the marriage, as far as the young woman is concerned, was the unconventionality of the man, certainly the basic motivation, and her complaint now is that she got more rather than less. Now, the husband states that he cannot or will not change. He's willing to analyze the situation, but he states here in a very matter-of-fact way that he must do these things, and he's not ready, and he may not be ready for several years. Now, in view of all the circumstances, especially the husband's attitude, it is the considered opinion of the board that the wife must accept this situation or reject it, and it is the responsibility for what happens, one way or the other, of the wife. That would seem to be the unanimous opinion of this board. As we express our thanks to our mediators and look forward to another session of the Court of Human Relations, it would seem clear that life, for most of us, is getting used to things we hadn't expected. Life is, of course, unpredictable. But when things go wrong, most of us like to feel that we're the victims of the blows of circumstance. Now, the wise men tell us that things do not just happen, that more often than not, as Disraeli put it, a man is not the creature of circumstances. Circumstances are the creatures of men.